This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another very special, but aren't they all special, episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, ever present, as always, to talk to a person and let you listen into that chat that we have. That's not only is it the point of the show, but I think that is what you enjoy. The guest this week is Brianna Collins from Tiger's Jaw. What a charming chat we had. She was just as sweet as I thought she was going to be. I had only met her once before and had a very brief interaction with her, but all the stuff I've ever seen about her and all of our mutual friends have nothing but glowing things to say about her. It took us a while to schedule this. We kept missing each other. She went on vacation, all this other stuff, but we finally hooked up. We finally spoke on the phone, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. But let's get some business out of the way, and then I will tell you a little bit more about Miss Collins. I like to say Miss or Ms. So all during the month of May, this show is doing a fundraising drive. Visit patreon.com/xpurposex, or you can just pop onto any of the social networks that exist for this particular show on Twitter or Facebook. Basically what we're trying to do, I need money to run this show. And of course, it doesn't cost a tremendous amount to put this together, but it's enough for me to be like, you know what? I've been doing this for 2 years for free, for fun, and that's essentially all I've been doing. You know, yeah, there's ads here and there's some things that help contribute to cover the costs, but now I'm at the point where it's like, you know what? I want you, the listener, that downloads this on a semi-regular basis to become involved. And what's cool about this fundraising campaign, it's kind of like Kickstarter in the fact that there are rewards. So it's like if you contribute a certain amount of money a month, you will get cool stuff like bonus episodes. I could interview you for a future episode, stickers, buttons, a bunch of other fun stuff that I'm going to incorporate as the time goes on. I just need your help. Plain and simple, that is what I'm looking for, because I want to pay my editor/producer, Tom. I want to buy better recording equipment. All these things I want to do to make the show better for you. And then in turn, more guests will come on. Cool stuff will happen. That sort of stuff. So like I said, visit patreon.com/xpurposex, and you will be able to find the fundraising page and get all of the info that you need about that. For those of you that donated so far, I really, really appreciate it. June is when you're going to start seeing that stuff come through to you. The bonus episodes, the stickers, the buttons, all the other fun stuff, the private email list that you get on, so you get the episodes even before anybody else does. So let's move on. We started a YouTube page because a lot of people were hitting me up being like, hey, I want to listen to your show, and I don't know how to. And it's like, well, first of all, how are you even interacting with this besides just tripping onto the website and being like, oh, I don't want to press play. So anyways, there's a site called YouTube. I think some of you are familiar with it. I started uploading episodes there. It's a slow but sure process because, you know, after all, this is like 100 some odd hours of content I already have. So I'm just kind of hitting some of the more recent episodes, some of the more popular episodes. And yeah, a lot of people are interacting with the show that way, which is cool. So if you are listening via YouTube, good job. Thanks. Visit propertyofzach.com. Visit the show's website, 100wordspodcast.com. Email the show. Let's keep talking. Let's keep dialoguing. Business aside, let's talk about Brianna. Tiger's Jaw is such an anomaly of a band because they really haven't been that active. Like, they've done tours here and there, but not to the point of where the fervor and excitement that people have over this band is like at such a groundswell. It's awesome to see because, as you'll hear from our conversation, the band has essentially been sort of on the back burner since it started. They just didn't have the ability to tour because they're all in school and doing all this stuff. So in the near future, they will be taking this as a full-time endeavor sort of thing, but they still have to get some of their life obligations out of the way. But it was just an interesting conversation because usually the context in which bands start playing and performing as like, we're going to do this. That is what our life is centered around. Whereas this, it was kind of an accidental thing in regards to their own popularity. And it's just really, really cool to see all this kind of transpire and to get a person's perspective that's in the middle of it. We talk about a bunch of awesome stuff. I feel like she hit on a lot of stuff that she doesn't typically get asked about and is able to speak about. So without further ado, here is my conversation, and I will talk to you afterwards. Personal entry to the music you're creating and kind of you as a person.
Okay.
So I ran Sound and Fury for 5 years until we decided to not do it last year. So you guys played in 2009, right? You guys attempted to play in 2009.
2009, yeah. I think it was just after I graduated high school.
Okay. It was myself and my best friend Joey. We were the ones putting it on, and I was very excited that you guys were able to make it out and play. And then obviously everything happened to where you couldn't play. And there was there's only I think 5 or 6 bands left to play. And obviously you guys were one of them. And I just remember above all, I mean, it was a very traumatic experience in my own life, but above all, I felt so bad for the bands that couldn't play, of just like a genuine sort of like sadness. Was like, oh man, like all of these bands made such an effort to come out here, and then this stupid thing happened. I mean, obviously, I know you guys ended up playing that, ridiculous house show that is forever immortalized on YouTube. Was it weird for you guys coming out to the West Coast and kind of having this general air of enthusiasm about the band?
Yeah, I mean, that was our first time ever going past the East Coast, so it was like really exciting. And a lot was happening. Like I turned 18, like probably like 3 days before Sound and Fury or something like that. So I don't know. It was just all like really new and really exciting to finally be able to like do something like real with the band for so long. Well, like in still school.
Right.
Had always been like in the way, forever in the way.
Sure. So it felt like being able to do something quote unquote legitimate and make it 3,000 miles away from your home was like a sort of achievement in and of itself.
Yeah, and another thing too is that we grew up in this like awesome area that has these other like really cool bands that were doing it at the time too, and like we were still so young, like Title Fight and the Menzingers, and like they were all touring, and we hadn't really gotten to do like full U.S. tours yet, and it was so exciting to finally be able to like be like, yeah, like we're getting in the van and we're doing it. Like we're finally going to be gone for longer than 2 weeks. It's going to be crazy.
The way you're putting it makes it sound so cute too. Like it was like this charming thing. Like, oh yeah, we're going to be able to spend a little more time away from home. And like, as opposed to, I mean, I think a lot of people view touring as like this, very high octane experience. And you guys, it sounds like it was a sweet enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've ever had a high octane tour, but
True.
No, it's always just been like fun. That's like the most important part, like for it not to become like this like super stressful, like, burden of a thing. Like it's still, I feel like we still rarely tour, so it's still like this very like lighthearted, fun thing that we like get to do every year.
Right.
So still feels kind of the same way. Like, wow, we finally get to go.
They're all centered around vacation, like, the typical school vacation. So in a way, it's like, because I played in bands for years in high school, and it was always one of those things where, you'd come back after a summer. And of course, like, the kids that don't play in bands, which is a majority of them, were like, oh, hey, what'd you do over the summer? And it's like, oh, play video games or whatever. And then it was like, oh yeah, I was gone for like 2 months, like on tour. And it was always that like, what?
Yeah.
Do you have that experience too? People like, no, you're not in a band.
I feel like my school life especially was always kind of like very separate from the band, and even like sometimes meet people who were Tiger Shroff fans that didn't know, like that I went to school with, that like didn't know that I was in the band. Because I guess it's something that I don't know if advertise is the right word, but I'm not like, yeah, I'm like in this band. Like, if it comes up, it comes up, but I don't know. Especially funny during student teaching, and then, like, the kids finding out and it being like, I didn't want it to become, like, this thing that was in a band, and I'm, like, looking me up on YouTube or something. So that was a pretty interesting situation.
You were student teaching and that occurred, and so you had to kind of handle that situation as it arose?
My cooperating teacher, who was amazing, well, I student taught in a high school like right outside of Philadelphia, so it wasn't quite an inner city school, but it was definitely very urban and like very diverse. So I went in thinking like, I'm not really sure like how many people will even know about Tiger's Jaw. Like I had like, it might happen, like I don't know what that will be like when I encounter it, because I need to be seen as like, you know, the teacher, you know, like when I see kids at shows or like, you know what I mean? Like, like I could be friends with them. I could talk to them. But I was like, I don't know how I'm going to approach this if like they come up to me and they're like, I know who you are.
Right.
Which did happen. And I basically had to be like, and this was also like, you know, after the whole ordeal last year with people leaving the band and a lot of people were confused. So that was one thing that some of my students would like ask me about. And I would just be like, listen, I would totally talk to you about this, but I just like can't talk to you about it here. You know what I mean? Like here
Right.
I'm Miss Collins. Outside of school, I'm Brianna, and you can like talk to me about it. But, you know, it was kind of just an awkward. Now I work in an elementary school, and I do not worry about it.
If you're finding out about Tiger's Jaw, you must have a really cool older brother or sister.
Although today, because it's like an elementary middle school, I overheard some of my 8th grade girls that were in a study hall that I was subbing in. They were like, yeah, like, have you heard about this band B-Side? Like, they're so cool. Like, I'm going to Warped Tour this year, and I just, like, couldn't help but be like, oh, my God, hilarious. Like, this is me as a 13-year-old, like, it's hilarious to see.
Right. Yeah, it's adorable to run into that sort of like, yeah, I mean, when you see that sort of youthful enthusiasm, you can't help but be like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my wife is a high school English teacher. She never played in a band or like did anything like that. But since I was always active in music, she always had kids come up to her and be like, your husband is that guy that sings for that band. And it was one of those things she had to, I mean, she didn't get probably punished like you where they were asking about the future plans of the band, but she always had to navigate that because, yeah, you don't want to break down that level of like, okay, I'm an authority figure. I really shouldn't be looked at as like a peer, even though we can be cool, but there's that line you need to, you know, be professional.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I am like, especially when I was like student teaching, like, you know, like my seniors were 18, you know, like I have friends that are that old. So it was just like when I'm in that setting, like they need to respect me like a teacher. And so I didn't want to be like their friend. Like I'm like, you know, too cool with them, but I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to shut them out either, because that's obviously something that I could like talk to them about and relate to them. And
yeah,
I don't know. I think in the end, it did help me. It gave me kind of this little bit of a thing that like interesting, I guess, about me being their teacher. But
yeah,
I didn't like play YouTube videos of Tiger Jaw for them or anything. It just was like, if they found out, they found out. I was not like,
hey, check this out, guys. Here's a sampler. Got a new record coming out.
The only time I did like really talk about being in the band and kind of how it relate, like being in the band has helped me with like what I'm going to school for and being an artist, quote unquote, and stuff like that. Like I talked to the AP class about it because I believe all Tiger's Jaw art is like stuff that I've done. So I was like, if your friends have a band or if you know someone that has like this platform where they could like put your work out there, like that's basically what it started as just like, oh, this is convenient and like something that I'd love to do to like now, you know, like I feel like it's like my thing now to kind of like do our art stuff and designs. And now I help with a couple other bands doing stuff like that. So
yeah, you're taking the sometimes intangible, unpractical thing of, you know, being an artist and doing stuff for your band, but then being able to apply it to other areas of your life. And then it's like, oh no, this can work. And this is how you can apply that. So, but you yourself, you were born and raised in like the Scranton area or Doylestown?
Well, yeah, it's the eastern side of Pennsylvania, but I was born in like northeastern Pennsylvania, like 20 minutes outside of Scranton, kind of a more rural area. I went to high school with Greg Barnett from the Menzingers and Bob Barnett from Captain We're Sinking.
Got it.
But that's actually through them. That's like how I met Adam and like how I ended up joining Tiger's Jaw, because, you know, Hamlin is literally the middle of nowhere, it seems. And you have to like drive 30 minutes to go to the mall or anywhere really. They just got a Dunkin' Donuts. It was like the biggest deal in the world.
Lines are on the block.
So, well, yeah, there aren't sidewalks, but if there were, I'm sure.
What was your family structure like? Like brothers and sisters and mom and dad, or what?
I have, a mom and a dad, and they're awesome. We they still live in the house that I born and moved into.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 older brothers, but they're 10 and 11 years older than me. That was a pretty interesting thing growing up. Like when I was 8, they were graduating high school. So
Right.
now that I'm getting older, it's kind of, we've gotten closer as I've gotten older, sort of.
Yeah.
Catching up to them.
Well, totally. Because what high schooler is going to be like? Oh yeah, like my 8-year-old sister. Like I don't really even know where to begin with that.
They were really good with me though. From like I have really good memories of like they obviously had to babysit me because they were the perfect age to babysit when I was like seriously needing a babysitter. So they never really, at least from my memory, I don't like they would bring me around and like their friends were always really nice to me. It was funny because when I was in high school, like some of their friends were my teachers, and I don't know, it was pretty. I don't remember it being that bad. I remember one time though, like I am the baby and the only girl, but like they're 2 boys, and I remember one time we were all having like a pillow fight or something while they were babysitting me, and my one brother like knocked me straight off the bed, and I got like a bloody nose. It was like horrifying.
Sure.
And my mom was so pissed off. But other than like typical childhood
brother-sister stuff.
Brother-sister fights, yeah.
I always find it interesting too when the family structure, when you do have children so far apart in age. To me, it strikes me as your parents are probably like, hey, maybe we should have a girl.
That was literally it.
Okay.
That was literally, they like wanted a girl and like tried and I don't know, like then it happened. They were happy about it though.
And what did your parents do for a living as you were growing up?
My mom is a nurse. Well, she's a nurse, but she was, this is like wordy to say, the director of geriatric services at a hospital. So she basically like senior medical mental health stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad worked at this like plant for RCA, like the, TVs and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But they like moved to Mexico. They did that whole thing where they like laid off all their workers. So I had to have been like starting high school or something, but he started working at this place called Deluxe Digital Studios, and they get stuff ready for like Amazon Prime and like Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff. And that's like what my brother does in California.
Oh,
but my dad's job was to like, I would have loved that he had to like watch movies like over and over again and make sure all of the details were correct.
Uh-huh.
Like my only way to explain it is like he had to do all the games and stuff. So for like Saw 4 or something like that, they had a game where it was 99 questions, but if you got a question wrong, it took you back to the beginning. And like think about Saw. And so he had to test it and make sure that he had to like play the game so that he got every question wrong to make sure that it took you back to the beginning.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, he did that. He's retired now. He deserves it.
Yeah, quality control.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's crazy. And so, and the way that you're describing your town, it's like I'm envisioning it like the proverbial one stoplight town.
Basically that, like minimal street lights. Like you're lucky if there are lines in the center of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And like it really wasn't that bad. Like I don't know. I feel like I was looking at my parents like always took me to go and do whatever I wanted. And Scranton's not that far, but they don't work in Hamlin. Like they work in Scranton.
Got it.
So,
So would you classify it more as like rural or suburban?
definitely rural.
Okay. Your address may have just been like, Highway 48, P.O. Box, whatever.
Yep, like Road 7 or something. Yeah, they changed it. 'Cause I live on kind of like a cul-de-sac type thing. It's actually like a hill,
Mm-hmm.
but they gave it a name, but it was Road something, and like when I was really little, but they had to change everything for like 911 calls, so it was like more specific.
Sure. Yeah, they're not just tossing you in a general area. Oh yeah, they're over there.
Yeah, they're on Road 7 somewhere.
And so then as you were, growing up in your formative years, what kind of kid were you? What were you looking at your older brothers trying to be kind of a tomboy, or did you find yourself, a sensitive artist type, like as you were as you were going through high school?
Well, I think when I was like really little, I was lucky that at the time when I was growing up, there were a lot of really great families living like in my neighborhood. That was kind of more of like what you'd imagine as a suburban setup, where I could like walk across like my street to go to a neighbor. But mind you, we were on like a hill, and then like the next plot of neighbors would be like far. So the families all had boys. So I guess like I liked to, ride my bike down the trails in the woods and like look for salamanders and like that kind of thing when I was little. But I've never been like a super girly girl. But I guess I kind of am now. I love like wearing dresses and getting my nails painted.
Sure.
But in high school, I really liked music. In 7th grade, I had a crush on a boy, and he gave me a mix, and that kind of like, of course,
that's huge.
set the tone. Yeah, it was pretty huge.
This was totally I think it's most guys' moves, but in as much detail as you can. What format was it on? Was it on a tape or was it on an actual CD?
It was on a CD.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was made specifically for me or like a burned copy of something.
Sure.
It was a mix of like, it had Brand New on it, like early like Your Favorite Weapon stuff, but then it had like Streetlight Manifesto songs.
Okay.
I don't know. And at that time, I was also like Fall Out Boy and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Because I was a big fan of this move. Did he write descriptions of why he put the songs on the actual mix for you?
No, he wasn't.
Oh,
He wasn't that thoughtful. 7th grade, we were about 12, so I don't know if he had gotten to that point yet where he was really...
He didn't know his move yet. You know? Was that kind of how you cut your teeth on music? Was it Fall Out Boy and that sort of, you know, pop punk stuff that you became aware to you? And how did you get introduced to that?
7th grade, just that pivotal year. One good thing about Hamlin is, like I said, Bob and Greg both went to my high school, and they're like Greg's 2 years older than me, and Bob's 2 years older than me, but they were like running shows and doing shows and stuff. And I remember I went to something called a Mighty John show, which was just at a local church, and it was like a ska show because, of course, everybody was super into ska then, which they probably still are. But my mom let me go because it was like at a church, and she obviously didn't like know what it was really. I was just like, oh yeah, we're going to this thing, and she dropped me off, and I don't know, I just like loved that. I love like being at a show and like seeing this music, and it was the first time I crowd surfed. It was like,
whoa,
got really into Streetlight Manifesto and Brand New were like my favorite bands. And then I don't know, I started just like making friends that were like going to shows and, you know, listening to the same kind of stuff that I was. A lot of people had older siblings that were like kind of closer, like unlike me. Like their older brothers would be, and older sisters would be like, you know, we were in middle school, but they were in high school and like starting to do all this cool stuff. That was also something that was like introducing me more to like going to shows and like stuff like that. But
right, you had something to kind of like look up to.
My own brothers didn't really have a similar like taste in music. They were listening to like rap or like country or something, which I do like little bits of either of those, but like in the early 2000s, it wasn't like something that I was trying to listen to.
So then as you started to get involved with this stuff, did your parents have any idea what to do with you?
Yeah, not really. I mean, my oldest brother, Jason, is really good. Is like super smart, very intelligent, was really good at golf and tennis, and he has like 3 master's degrees or something right now. He's like, my other brother, Justin, who is only like a year younger than Jason, super athletic, amazing at sports, still is the track coach for my high school. And then I did well in school, like academic wise, and I liked sports. Like I did when I was younger, I did like gymnastics and swimming. I danced until I graduated high school. But I also liked art and music, and like I did a lot of stuff like with the art program at my high school, and I did this thing called Arts Alive, which was like an intensive art program in the summer that held in Scranton. And so I think it was just like my parents like had like one and then the other that were like very like, you know, Jay was good at school and like doing these things, and Justin like doing these things, and I just like doing a whole bunch of things, and especially like the music stuff and going to shows. Like they didn't really like necessarily get, but I think they knew that it was like a good outlet for me, and it wasn't like something where bad things were happening. So I was like super lucky that they like let me go, because Cafe Metropolis, which was like the big venue, not big in size, but like the venue that a lot of bands played at in Wilkes-Barre, was 45 minutes away from my parents' house. My mom would let Greg drive. She like didn't let anybody under the age of 18 drive me for some reason. So she would like, if Greg was driving when I was younger, she would like let him or someone else of my friends that was like older like drive me down, and I get to like go to shows and stuff. So I don't know. I feel very lucky that my parents, although they didn't like necessarily get it, and I still don't think they get it, they like came to our show in Scranton in December when we did like the holiday show, and you know, I think they could see like how it's like kind of like a legitimate thing, you know what I mean? Like we're not like, I don't know, I don't want to say like you're not a legitimate band if you're not like playing in front of a bunch of people. I feel like to my parents who have like no real concept of going to a show, like they're like, oh, okay, go to shows or do anything like that. Really.
Right. Well, it's just, I think the biggest thing is just kind of putting it in context. Like even, playing in front of 150 people inside of a, hot, sweaty room, if you show a parent that, you'll be like, oh, wow, like someone is finding something that my kid is doing of worth. And like that, that kind of puts it in context where it's like, oh, they're not just, wasting their time doing some experimental art project to, one person in a weird room in the middle of Baltimore. So like, something that's just like, oh, you're completely quote unquote wasting your time. But that's cool. That's cool that they gave you that, that leash to go on rather than, be like, oh, we don't understand this. We need to really lock down on her.
I mean, I'm sure at some points when I was like, 14 and like in my room alone, like blasting like my My Chemical Romance record, they were like, what is going on? But they never like told me not to listen to certain music. Like they just kind of like let me do my own thing as long as I was still like, keeping good grades and like I was in like a million clubs. So it wasn't like I was like a loner or anything. Like I still like to them I feel like seemed like fine. Just do my own things, I guess.
Right. Well, yeah, you were being active and productive from like the sort of stereotypical high school experience as far as, like you said, clubs and athletics and that sort of stuff. But you might have been doing things that weren't, the that might not be the first or second choice of most typical high school students, but you were still active, which obviously, calms parents from that perspective of they're like, okay, my kid's, like you said, my kid's alone in his room, his or her room. They're not doing anything. They're not participating. What do they care about? I think that's what sets parents' alarm bells off, where it's like they need to care about something, right? As you obviously became immersed in, all going to shows and all that sort of stuff. Because Tiger's Jaw, for all intent and purposes, is your first band, right?
Yeah, I was going to say the only band, but I guess I'm like kind of in pedal now. So yeah, like the first band I've ever played in was Tiger's Jaw.
Right. Which is really disheartening for most people to hear, because normally you're supposed to play in some terrible bands when you're obviously in high school, and then you get to just be like, oh, well, yeah, I do this thing, and and of course Tiger's Jaw has obviously evolved sonically, but even on your first releases there was elements of what you are doing now in it. So yeah, basically I think most people will hear this and just be like, you know what, screw you. You didn't play in a terrible band.
I mean, I just got really lucky because Adam and Ben were writing like music that I liked, and that was like one reason why when Adam and I were like talking on AIM, and he was like, yeah, our keyboardist quit, and I was like, well, I've taken piano lessons for 8 years. Like, I could help you out if you like need someone to play at a show, and like that's just like basically how it happened. I like played a show with them, and then they were like, "Do you want to be in the band?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I like sat down while I played, like a true piano player. It was hilarious and embarrassing.
So you did that actually at your actual first show. You sat down and like pulled out a chair and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had a chair.
That's spectacular because that's how you play piano, obviously.
Yeah.
That was the only context in which you knew.
Yeah.
So
I was so nervous, but it's really funny in retrospect.
Well, if you weren't nervous, I would have questioned you, because even if you are not nervous, like you shouldn't really, look cool on stage, like when you're that young, when you're just figuring it out.
I definitely didn't. I still don't think I really have it figured out, but at least I'm not sitting down.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I don't necessarily agree that you look like the last time I saw you guys play was when you played Chain Reaction the last time you came through, and it is one of those things, like I think just because you guys don't have that sort of like full-time touring mindset of like, okay, here we are Tiger's Jaw, we're this really professional band, because that's obvious. That's obviously what like most bands strive to be. And since you guys haven't had that on your agenda, there is this sort of like just I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it without sounding like a slam, like because it's like a sort of lackadaisical, like, hey, we're Tiger's Jaw, and we're just kind of showing up to play some songs for you guys. There are very few bands that can pull that off without being like, oh, come on, like, give me a break. Hopefully you sound okay.
Well, that and after, Adam was always the one that talked during shows, so obviously Ben and I had to, I still don't really talk. I'm always, like, so afraid that I'm going to say something that, like, will come across as, like, not making sense or, I don't know. So Ben does do most of the talking now, but that's also why we're still kind of figuring it out.
Totally. I could see that, where it's just like, oh yeah, well, hey guys, how's it going? Here we are in front of you. Here's some songs.
I'm not going to tell a joke, but
right. Yeah, I definitely do feel that there, some people obviously have sort of a stage persona, so to speak, where it's like they get on stage and they're still themselves, but they're maybe a more heightened version of themselves. But I mean, you in particular definitely feel like you exist completely in the same world, both on and off stage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a choice, so I'm not asking the crowd how they're doing tonight or anything.
Right.
Maybe I will be a see. You guys okay?
Right. How's it going, Houston? You guys ready?
Yeah.
Along those same lines, like just because Tiger Jaw has existed, like we were joking about earlier, in this world of your popularity continues to rise as far as like more people knowing about you guys and more people paying attention to what you're doing, but you're not a full-time touring band from that perspective, because obviously you've all dedicated yourselves to school and other avenues of life. I presume that's been sort of it's been intentional that you guys have obviously focused on school and not making the band the sort of typical let's drop everything, we need to do this. Has that something that's been sort of difficult for you personally to navigate, or did you ever want to at some point be like, yes, I want to drop everything and do this band from a full-time perspective?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I feel like I've thought about that a lot, like especially when I was just starting school and seeing Title Fight do that and like do well, and like it like worked out for them, and I was like, why, like we could totally do this. But the difference between like our situation and their situation is that like Ned and Jing didn't even start college, which was the wisest choice, I think. But like Ned and Ben were just starting school, and Shane wasn't like, like he went back to school like when they were doing their freshman year, but he wasn't like, this is where I really need to be. Like they all kind of had to sit, they were all ready to like put school on hold and like do it. Whereas I was a freshman at the same time as Ned and Ben were, but Ben and Dennis are 2 years ahead of me, and Pat and Adam were 3 years ahead. So people were just like everybody was like almost done, you know what I mean? And then when I had started and they had finished, like then it was their time to like wait for me to be done, So in the end, I'm like really happy that it turned out that way. But I can't say that like I never wished that we couldn't have just done it, because I feel like we could have, dropped out and been a band and like made it work. Mm-hmm. But now I'm happy that after Ben is done working towards his speech pathology license, like we'll have like I'm a certified teacher, he'll be a licensed speech pathologist, and then we could like go 100% at the band, and then if we want to come back to like real quote unquote real life like jobs, like we have that.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that we ended up doing it that way, but it was difficult at times, especially when like you get tour offers. Even still, like I'll get a text that'll be like, this band like asked about you guys doing this tour in the fall, and it's like, yeah, I can't do it, and I'm bummed, but we will do something cool eventually. Like it will happen. So
right. The impression that I always got, from you guys was that focus on like, we're gonna get our real life set up first, and then we can pursue this sort of this alternate universe of being in a band and touring and all that sort of stuff. But that's interesting that you obviously had a struggle in your own head. Backing up, like when you did first start to go to shows, like was it always in your head that you wanted to play in a band, or was it one of those things where you just
I never imagined being in a band?
Okay.
It kind of happened really fast. Like I started going to shows like 12, 13, and like, but not like every weekend, like just like when there was a show that I wanted to see, and like going to Warped Tour and stuff like that. But like when I was 14 was when I started to, kind of more consistently go to shows and make those friends that were like wanting to drive to Scranton to go to a show and stuff like that. And that's how I met Adam, and it kind of just happened really fast. Like basically the summer, I think it was the summer that I turned 15 that like I joined Tiger's Jaw. I always get like confused. Ben knows better than me. He has a much better memory. But like it all happened like very fast. It was like I was going to shows and all of a sudden I was in a band. But like I never like I didn't start a band. I didn't like seek it out. It kind of just like happened.
Right.
And like now I can't imagine like not being in Tiger's Jaw or like not being in a band, especially not being in Tiger's Jaw. I like can't imagine it. It's like just so much a part of my life.
Does it make you nervous from that perspective of, because obviously there's a certain concept of an identity that is obviously incorporated into, your band. Like obviously you're Brianna from Tiger's Jaw. Like that is what, your quote unquote average music listener will know you as. Does it sit in your head that you obviously try to, like you were similar to what you're doing, obviously we were talking about in school, how you have to kind of separate those two. Is that something that kind of goes through your head where it's like, okay, I can't place too much of my identity in this band?
I think I don't really think about that just because we're not really doing the band like that much.
Sure.
But I don't know. I guess like quote Brianna from Tiger's Jaw does come out like have to come out. I don't know. I don't really think about it like that as much. I don't think like when we're on tour, it kind of feels like that. Or like if I go to a show or like get recognized or something, which is still like very strange and surreal. Like that's when it feels like that. Like oh, somebody knows me like from this band, but like other than that, I guess I don't really like feel that way.
Sure. It's something when you're in the middle of it, it's definitely hard to put in context. And, as things progress and obviously if certain things, take more of a backseat in your life, that's when it's like you have the time to look back and like, oh, okay. Like I can see where this all sort of transpires. Not only in the, 30 minutes that we spoke, but you yourself, the demeanor in which you put out into the world is, you are a very sweet, charming, soft-spoken person. It's one of those things where the common conception, especially of independent music, is that there is, some element of either turmoil or, you don't identify with a lot of pieces in the world, whether it's like, oh, I don't feel like one of my peers or whatever. There's a juxtaposition there with the image that you obviously have. And then that sort of common, independent music listener, did you identify with that sort of stuff as you were, listening to My Chemical Romance in your bedroom alone? And, how did that all kind of transpire in your head as far as that's concerned?
I mean, yeah, I guess I definitely felt like I could relate to other people, like, through, like, the similar type of music that I was listening to. And I obviously, like, identified with the lyrics in some way, like, that. Like, I'm not okay, I promise. Like, when you're, a teenager, I mean, even still, like, and you're like pissed or you're upset or mad, especially like when I was younger and like, boyfriends and friendships that were like tumultuous, and my parents were awesome, but it wasn't like I never like fought with them or anything. So I think for me, like that was like what music was, like just like a very comforting thing. And like I loved being able to relate to lyrics. Like someone wrote that and it's like I could have written it. Like sounds so corny, but it's like I guess that's like how I related to it.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's an important point because, I mean, art doesn't necessarily need to be, like, created from pain, You can create something from, obviously, so many of the other different emotions, and then you can identify with something, maybe not the sort of, like, antisocial, anti-authoritarian, independent music construct, but you could be like, no, these lyrics speak to me because it makes me feel comfortable. And so photography has obviously been a huge part of your life. And that's something that you still continue to study at school?
Well, that's what I majored in. Yeah, I majored in photography, and then I have a concentration in art education. And the school that I went to, it basically is like putting a dual major into one thing, because some of the classes overlap for art education and like getting a BFA.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm like getting in my car.
That's okay.
My Bluetooth is about to do something weird, so hold on, let me fix it.
No problem. Photography is obviously such a huge component of music in general because there obviously is a way to visually represent what a person is trying to create sonically. Has that been something that you've found the relationship between the two pretty symbiotic?
Well, I actually got into photography because I really wanted to do band photography. Mm-hmm. And I used to bring like my parents' little point and shoot camera to shows until one time I got it stolen at a show when I set it down.
Rough.
But I split the cost of like a Rebel XTI, like digital SLR camera, with my parents for Christmas when I was 16. And I took like a darkroom photography class in high school. So I was shooting like film and digital, like through high school. Like, the band photography kind of, like, took more of a back seat to obviously exploring, like, more, I don't know, what you have to do in art school, you know, like a full-on project with, like, an artist statement behind it kind of thing. But on tour, like, that's, like, one thing I love to do. Like, I love to, like, have my camera with me and just kind of, like, you know, document, like, what we're, like, doing. Like, last year we went to like Kurt Cobain's house, and it was just like so pretty, and like I was so glad that I like had my camera with me. And like now I have those pictures forever, but they're not like on my phone. They're like actual like
prints.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have something tangible that you can look back on and be like, oh, that was a very special moment. Something I cannot relate to, but I'm always interested in is the conception of obviously being a female with an independent music, having that, I wouldn't even call it a burden, but that responsibility placed on you just because there's obviously not as many girls in bands and obviously even girls at shows in general. Was that something that was interesting for you as you first started to go to shows and notice like, hey, I am one of, 15 girls at this show? Like, when did you start to notice that being a thing?
I feel like in our, like, at least in the Scranton scene, like when I was younger and going to shows, like I had a lot of girlfriends that like were at shows, so it never really felt like this super outnumbered thing. And of course, because like when I joined Tiger's Jaw, we were playing shows like in Scranton, and we like all knew each other. It wasn't like, oh, like you're a girl in a band, like kind of thing. But I definitely have experienced things that are solely like I'm a girl and you're like making this assumption because I'm a female, like type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you try to get in, they're like, and you say you're in the band, and they're like, what band? Me having to like prove, like, yeah, I'm not lying, like, all right.
It's kind of a disbelief that you actually do, like you do play in a band.
Yeah, that hasn't happened in like years.
Sure.
Like a couple years, but I don't know. I feel too like because I'm a girl, like I get the kind of attention, like from, and it's not like it doesn't happen to boys either, because I totally see it happen to boys in bands. When I was younger, I totally did it too. Where like you're like, oh my god, like he's so good looking, blah blah blah. And not saying that like that's what like all people say about me, but I feel like you know, like if I ever feel strange desire to like maybe like search my name on a hashtag and like see what comes up, like like I see like weird things.
Right.
I'm just like, oh boy, no, I will not marry you. No, I don't think I'll ever love you like that. But it's all like fairly innocent. Like there have rarely been any that have made me feel truly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I did recently experience, I don't even like feel like really acknowledging it, but there was like a stalking incident with myself and Kylie, who's in Pedal, and a couple of our friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like this person who found us through Tiger's Jaw. He's a Tiger's Jaw fan, and got really obsessed, which he's relaxed, thank God. Probably realized that like it wasn't a good idea to like message my friends on Tumblr 100 times a day.
Yeah.
Just, like stuff like that. But I feel like that could I definitely think that there are like some inequalities and like definite differences with being like a female in a band. And I'm not like, I don't consider Tiger's Jaw like a female fronted band, which I feel like the girls who are in like female fronted bands like face a lot of stuff too. You know, everybody compares them to Paramore.
Right.
I love
course.
Paramore.
Right.
But and just stuff like that. But
well, no, that's interesting. I mean, I do think it's interesting the sort of object of affection that is totally,
that's a good word for it.
It happens to everybody, and it's so strange. Like the bands that I used to play in, I sang for them, and so by default, people will pay attention to you because you sing in a band. That's a reality, and so it became so strange for me to have like a female approach me and only be interested in me. Not because of the way I looked, not because of everything else, but because I got on stage and grabbed a microphone. And like it took me a minute to realize like whatever relationship could be gotten out of that is not meaningful and is not like and it is really strange to kind of have that sitting in your head where it's like, oh man, people are looking at me like that. Like, that's weird. Like, you feel like a piece of meat in a way.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like that.
Yeah.
I feel like, too, because I am, like, the only girl, I don't know. But, like, it's never been, like, something that's, like, been a thing in the band. Like, it's not like,
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, like, there was a girl, like, I think I talked on a small talk about them making boy jokes, which I kind of regret saying, but, like, just, like, things that they, like, joked around with each other that I necessarily didn't, like, you know, vibe with.
Right.
But I think in a band and, like, being a girl, like, a female, has also been, like, a really, like, positive thing for me, too, because I've had girls come up to me and say, like, how, like they see that I do it, and they're like, I feel like I could do it too. And I'm like, hell yeah, like, why not? Like, I didn't even, like, not that it's, like, easy to be in a band, but, like, to start a band, like, sure, like, find friends that do it, and, like, just try. Like, I don't think, like, being, like, male or female should, like, prohibit you from, like, doing what you, like, want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been, like, a really rewarding part, because, like, it's something that I, like, truly love and, like, you know, want to do for as long as possible. And I hope that, like, I don't know, girls see that and, like...
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, because it's like I mean, on this particular podcast, it's like I've done, you know, 100 some odd episodes, and, you know, you are like my fourth or fifth girl. The sort of feedback that I get from people in regards to females appearing on the show is honestly so much stronger, where they're like, thanks for having that. And it's like, to me, it's not intentional. Like, of course, I desire to speak to people of all different walks of life, but the reactions of, like you were saying, that sort of like empowering, like, oh, wow, you know, my sex doesn't have to be a barrier for entry, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exciting. The last thing I wanted to hit on was because of the nature of being in a band and leaving and, you know, being in a relationship and, like, having the context of touring and being able to sustain a relationship while you're obviously not only on the road, but, you know, as your significant other tours and stuff like that. Have you yourself found that more beneficial, that, you know, that you both have a common understanding of, like, okay, this is what it's like to be on tour and this is what it's like to do this, rather than, like, having one person that you're involved with not have an understanding of it?
I definitely feel like for myself, it has helped with, like, especially the more I've gotten to tour, to kind of understand, like, okay, so he might not be able to talk to me right now, but that's because he's actually busy and not just, like, you know, I'm not just assuming that he's, like, having fun all the time. Like, it is, like, actual work at points. Like,
Sure.
the best kind of work, but, you know, like, you still have stuff to do. And it definitely was harder when I was in school. Well, it was, I don't know. It was easier and harder when I was in school, because it was easier because I was distracted and, like, very focused. And I feel like us both having our own kind of, you know, our own shit going on, like, you know, I could do my own thing and, like, not have to rely on him being home to, like, you know, function as a normal human. Like, you know, I can, like, live my life, like, while he's gone and living his and doing his own stuff, and we could still, like, be in a relationship and be happy. But it was hard, too, because, you know, anytime he'd get to do something, like, really fun or cool, you know, and I'm, like, writing an 8-page paper, you know, I'd be like, come on.
Yeah. You're like, this is kind of a bummer.
But now we live together, so it's like, we'll see. He hasn't really been on tour that much.
Sure.
But I'm the one that's, like, going for the longest since that happened. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's just, like, kind of become a normal thing. Like, we've been dating for 6 years, so it's like, I don't know, like, Tiger Shaw and Title Fight did their first tours, like, their first real tours kind of together.
Right.
Even though I wasn't allowed to go, but since then, Title Fight's basically been touring, so it's just something that I've kind of grown accustomed to, and he's really good at talking on the phone to me, so.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's cool because it definitely, you know, because you've obviously had the long experience of being together and watch each other, you do have a better understanding of, I mean, not only where each other is coming from, but obviously, you know, a gradual change, as opposed to, like, you know, you all of a sudden meeting him now and dating him and being like, oh, I got to get used to, like, you're gone for this long?
Yeah.
This sucks.
I guess in that way, like, it was, I don't know if lucky's the right word. I do feel lucky, but.
Yes. Right. The timing was right. The last thing I want to hit on was the idea of, obviously, like you were mentioning earlier, in the fact that there is a horizon in which Tiger Jaw obviously can be a more, you know, basically the focal point of your life.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, exactly. Is that something that, I mean, I sense the excitement in your voice. Is there any trepidation as well of, like, oh man, this could be scary, that this could, you know, fail miserably within a year? Or is it one of those things where it's like, oh, because we've got ourselves set up in the normal life, we can always return to that?
I I think for me, it's tough because like right now we're in like this strange transitional period where like I graduated college and now I'm doing this kind of temporary-esque job of substitute teaching, and I've gotten job offers from a couple of the schools that I work for like more full-time positions, but it's like, I really we want to do Tiger's job, so I'm like holding off on doing that. Obviously hoping that I'm like making the right decisions, but like we've been working towards this for like 8 years, so it's 9 years. I don't know, however long it's been. But if we don't like at least try to like do like a couple tours in a row, like I don't think we need to be a band that tours like 9 months out of the year. Like we never have been. But I'd like to go places and do things that we've been, held back from doing because, we've had to finish school, we've had to finish like getting our, professional shit together.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, and it is like comforting to know that like I'm working for this one woman who's going on maternity leave for 3 months in the fall at the same school, and just making like connections with people at a school district that I really like, and you know what I mean. So it's like it's not like I hide being in a band from them. So they know that like that's something I want to do, and I'm hoping that I make like a good enough relationship with them that maybe when it does come comes time to maybe take a step back from touring and like do something else, they'll like let me sub again, or like maybe see if there's a position or something. So I'm excited.
Yeah,
it's all very nerve-wracking, but such is life.
Yeah, it's very true. It is interesting because I do feel like there is an element of because the old adage of being young and dumb, where it's like when you're when you start to tour when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, sometimes you don't even have the wherewithal to either appreciate what you're surrounded by and like experiencing. You're just like concerned about having fun, and that's like it. So maybe just because obviously you're a little bit older and have a little bit more perspective on the stuff that you can enjoy, it might be you have a finer appreciation of tours as opposed to just like, oh wow, what's the next fun thing I get to do? So it could be cool from that perspective.
I definitely think that, and I also I'm only 22. So do I really, if I say, do I want to, tour with my band because I finally have the chance, or do I want to, work at the same place every day for the next, 180 days? I feel like I'm out of, the point in my life where I still have, I don't have kids, I'm not married, I'm at, a really good position to do, what I want to do. And, then, too, once we finally have everything done, I'm just so excited to go and see new places and, like you said, appreciate it all and take it all in while I can.
No, for sure. It's super exciting. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hanging out and chopping it up with me. I appreciate it. So there you go. There is my conversation with Brianna. Just what a sweet girl, right? I mean, like I said, I was expecting her to be cool, but then afterwards it was just like, oh, she's charming. She's great. I'm glad she's one of the good people doing the good things. So, like I said, fundraising for this show. Visit patreon.com/xpurposex. If you go to a few shows a month, this is cheaper. Way cheaper. If you're like, you know what, I'm going to give the show $5 a month, which is that's what, $60 a year? You equate to the 52 hours of stuff I give you a year as far as these episodes are concerned. It's like fractions. You're spending like $1 or $2. It's a deal, basically. That's what I'm saying. It would be crazy of you to not donate. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, the producer for this episode, as always, is Tom Richfield. Visit propertyofzach.com. Visit 100wordspodcast.com. And until next week, and I got a really good show next week, going to do a little tease right here. The story so far, you've probably heard of the band. Quite a large band within the context of independent music. One of the hot up-and-comers. I have one of the members of that band on the show next week. So let's talk then. Be safe, everybody.